Hi, and welcome to Focal Point, AFR Talk, this Thursday edition. Brian Fisher is my name, your host, congenial, convivial, and amiable as always. You are on board the USS Focal Point, which is our patrol boat in which we patrol the choppy waters of America's public life, looking without pause for the coordinates where truth intersects with politics, where truth intersects with America's public life. Great to have you in the conversation. The USS Focal Point is our patrol boat in which we patrol the choppy waters of America's public life. Our commander is on the bridge. The scriptures, our nautical charts, the Holy Spirit, our navigator, and I serve as your loyal, humble, and cheerful first mate. Here is a breaking story before we get into some other stuff. This is about Lois Lerner. Remember, Lois Lerner was the one who was the director of the tax-exempt organization division of the Internal Revenue Service. So she was the one that was in charge of the division of the IRS that was auditing the Billy Graham Evangelistic Association, James Dobson's Family Talk, or obstructing their application for tax-exempt status, and doing all of these audits. Doing these audits on donors to Mitt Romney's campaign. IRS was doing that. She was in charge of the tax-exempt division, so she's responsible ultimately for all of this harassing of Tea Party groups. Now here's a story, a breaking story on Gateway Pundit. Under the direction of Lois Lerner, the Federal Education Commission sued the Christian Coalition in the 1990s. She harassed the Christian Coalition for 3 election cycles. And we talked about this once before. She even had Oliver North, grilled Oliver North one time, asking about Pat Robertson praying for him. Yeah, Pat Robertson prays for me. It's not against the law in America. Well, what did he pray over you? I don't know. He prayed that I would be healthy and that God would bless me. And she went into this detail, and finally Oliver North's attorney interjected and said, what in the world does this have to do with the Federal Elections Commission? What in the world does this have to do with a campaign issue? And so she finally backed off, and she lost her legal challenges to the Christian Coalition. So she's had a history. This is back to 1996 when she was at the FEC. This is before she got to the IRS. But she was using the Federal Elections Commission, the FEC, that monitors election activity in the United States. She was using the FEC to harass conservative Christian organizations at the time, Pat Robertson's Christian Coalition. And so when she got to the IRS in 2000, 2001, she just kind of picked up right where she left off at the FEC and started going after conservative organizations. Then here is this. Listen to this. Lois Lerner made this offer to Republican Senate candidate Al Salvi in 1996, quote, promise me you will never run for office again and we will drop this case. Here's the excerpt from the news story on it. In 1996, Lois Lerner, the IRS official at the center of the harassment of Tea Party groups seeking tax-exempt status, was head of the enforcement division of the Federal Elections Commission. You know, enforcement division, everywhere she goes, she's the head of the enforcement division. She's the one that's responsible to crack down on people, to bang heads. So that's just historically. She's just been a hatchet woman for the federal government since she started in public service. That year, Al Salvi was the Republican nominee for the U.S. Senate from Illinois. His Democrat opponent was then Congressman Dick Durbin, and we know that Dick Durbin's still making trouble up on Capitol Hill today. He got in. He's been there ever since. During the final weeks of the campaign, Salvi loaned himself over $1 million to buy ads in the Chicago media market. This, in turn, prompted the Democratic Party's campaign arms to file complaints with the FCC, specifically with Lois Lerner, and this was when Mr. Salvi contends that Lois Lerner made him the following offer. Promise me you will never run for office again and we'll drop this case. Now, there's no reason you can't loan yourself money. I mean, Mitt Romney put who knows how many untold millions of dollars into his 2008 campaign. There's no reason you can't loan your campaign coffers money if you have the resources to do it. Here's the Illinois, and Al Salvi refused that offer, and he had to fight the FEC for several more years before a judge tossed out the complaint. So this Lois Lerner basically tries to, I don't know what you would call that. It's not extortion exactly, I guess it's blackmail, because she's saying, look, I'll leave you alone if you'll promise as a Republican you'll never run for office again. We don't want your kind in office. We want Democrats in office. If you agree you will never run for public office again, we'll drop this whole thing about this donation, this perfectly legal loan that you have made, not a donation, a loan you made to your own campaign. Now, the Illinois Review broke this story, and they actually interviewed Al Salvi. Here's an excerpt from that story. Soon after the IRS story broke, Al Salvi told Illinois Review that it was IRS official Lois Lerner who represented the FEC in a Democrat complaint against him. According to Salvi, Lerner was, without question, politically motivated and went so far as to make him an offer, promise me you'll never run for office again, we'll drop this case. When he saw Lerner plead the Fifth Amendment before Congress last week, he recognized her. That's the woman, and I didn't plead the Fifth like she did. So that thing just gets worse. The deeper you dig into it, the worse things look. So now we've got Lois Lerner, who in the FEC was leaning on Republican candidates, politically motivated, using her office with the FEC, which is designed by law to be utterly impartial, totally objective, trying to hound this guy out of the pursuit of public office. Now, of course, they've got a real big problem with the IRS. Let's grab clip number 3 if we can. This IRS problem is a pretty serious problem for the Obama administration. In fact, I'm looking at a poll here that indicates this is the item that's of the biggest concern to the American people. I'm calling this whole thing ObamaGate. I think I'm the first one to use that term. Some other people in the media picked up on it this morning after I put it out there. But this whole thing is just ObamaGate. That's what this thing is. It's ObamaGate because it's all about Obama. And that's what Greg Sargent said. He writes Plumline blog site. And he said, look, that's an interesting take on this thing, but he agreed that this thing is all about Obama. Obama is at the center of all of these scandals, whether you're talking about Benghazi, whether you are talking about the IRS, whether you are talking about the Associated Press. It's Barack Obama that's right dead center in the middle of all of these. So this is ObamaGate. And by the way, ObamaGate started to take its toll on President Obama's approval numbers. He's been kind of sailing apart from the fray here because he's able to say, oh, we're fighting this. We're getting on this. This is inexcusable what the IRS did. We're going to crack down. We're going to find out who did this. We're getting after it. Then the Benghazi thing, we're going to find out who's responsible. We will track them down to the end of the earth. So everybody has this impression that these things were happening around Obama, and he was clueless. He had no idea that this kind of skullduggery was taking place, and he is perpetuating that that idea. DOJ, all that Jay Carney. I refer you to the DOJ. Don't talk to us about this invasion of the First Amendment rights of the press. Don't talk to us about that. You got to go talk to Eric Holder over at the DOJ. I got nothing to do with that. I'm as upset about that as you are. So President Obama, he feigns this outrage, this public outrage over all of these scandals. I'm going to get to the bottom of this. You can trust me. This is inexcusable. We'll find out who's responsible. We'll deal with it. But he's at the center of all of this. But the media has been cooperating with him to try to provide him some insulation, provide him some cover. Well, this is the fault of the IRS. This is the fault of the Department of Justice. This is the fault of the State Department. Poor, misguided, beleaguered, misled, deceived, fooled, lied to President Obama had nothing to do with any of this. He's innocent. He's pure. He's not culpable for any of this. It's these people around him that have let down our dear leader. But some of that is beginning to fade, that glow and that protection beginning to fade. According to Quinnipiac, 76% of the American people want a special prosecutor to look into this IRS business. 76 to 17. So the American people are pretty worked up about this IRS thing. And I think that's because everybody's got to deal with the IRS. Everybody in America. They know what happens to your heart rate when you get a letter from the Internal Revenue Service. Everybody hates that organization because you get some communication from them. It's never good. And so the American people have just about had it with the IRS, and so they want this thing looked into. And by a 44 to 33% margin, they say that people that are poking into this IRS controversy are raising legitimate concerns. And 44% said that investigating IRS was the most important of the three scandals. Benghazi, 24%, and search warrants for journalist records, 15%. So 3 times as many people want something done about the IRS as want something done about the Associated Press, and it's finally hurting President Obama's approval ratings. Quinnipiac poll released just today, latest survey, 49% disapproved of his performance, with 45% approving. Just last month, May 1, he had a 48% job approval rating, 45% disapproving. So he's gone from +3, 48-45, to -4, 45-49. That's a 7-point swing in just 1 month. Now here's Jay Carney being asked by Major Garrett, clip 3 of CBS News, about this whole business about the IRS. Let's listen.
On the Attorney General's testimony that you've been asked about today, is it your position he was technically accurate but not fully responsive, or accurate and fully responsive?
I would refer you to the Justice Department for further details about what specifically the Attorney General was saying. I think based on published reports, it is my understanding that this case is complete and that no further prosecutorial action will be taken. Again, based on my reading of published reports.
The question from the member of Congress was, is there anything in this world that you're personally responsible with or overseeing or have an active role in?
I mean, I would just point you to what the Attorney General said about his view on whether or not prosecution was an issue or is an issue. And I would simply point you to what the Attorney General said, and I'm saying based on the published reports.
The published reports that I've seen, I see no conflict, again, based on my reading of the published reports. Now, that's my bad. That was not about the IRS. That was about the Department of Justice poking into the records of the Associated Press. Associated Press today saying that the Department of Justice went after thousands of phone records. It's a much bigger deal than the administration is trying to let on. But you notice with Jay Carney, it's just like President Obama, published reports. You see that twice he talks about published reports based on my reading of published reports. Like Jay Carney, he says it twice, what he said in the published reports. Published reports like Jay Carney has absolutely no source of information other than the information that you and I have access to. Jay Carney, just like President Obama, I got to read it in the newspaper just like you. You'll have to go talk to Eric Holder. I don't know anything. I just know what I read in the newspaper. You got to go talk. I refer you to the Department of Justice. Focal Point, AFR Talk.